Mom takes daughter to pediatrician after sleepover with dad. Doctor spots error, dials 911 in panic. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Sunday evenings in the Bennett household usually meant warm cookies, homework checks, and preparing for the week ahead. Sarah Bennett, a dedicated elementary school teacher, had established this routine to help her 6-year-old daughter Emily transition smoothly after weekends with Michael, her ex-husband. Tonight, however, something was different. "Mommy, my tummy feels weird," Emily said quietly as she dragged her pink backpack through the doorway. Her usual post-weekend excitement was absent, replaced by an unusual pallor that immediately caught Sarah's attention. "Did you eat too many treats at Daddy's?" Sarah asked, kneeling to Emily's level and brushing a strand of blonde hair from her daughter's forehead. The child's skin felt clammy. Emily shook her head slowly. "No, I don't think so." Sarah helped Emily to the living room couch, noticing how the little girl moved gingerly, as if each step required extra thought. As Emily settled against the cushions, Sarah unpacked her daughter's weekend bag, pajamas, favorite books, and at the bottom, Hoppy, the stuffed rabbit that went everywhere Emily did. "Emily, Hoppy is all dusty. Didn't Daddy give him his bath?" Sarah asked, surprised. Michael was typically meticulous about such things, almost annoyingly so. Emily clutched her stomach slightly. "Daddy forgot. He forgot lots of things this weekend." Something in her daughter's tone made Sarah pause. "What else did he forget, sweetie?" "He made breakfast twice," Emily said, her brow furrowing with the seriousness only a 6-year-old could muster. "And he called me by the wrong name once. He called me Emma." Sarah's phone buzzed with a text, Michael checking in, as he usually did after drop-offs. "Hope my princess had a good time. Was just telling Mom about our butterfly catching." "Butterfly catching? In November?" Sarah frowned. "We didn't catch butterflies, Mommy," Emily said, peeking at the phone. "Daddy said we would, but then he took a really long nap instead." Sarah set the phone aside, making a mental note to call Michael later. "How about some ginger tea for that tummy? Then an early bedtime tonight." Emily nodded, but her usual brightness remained dimmed. Through bath time and stories, she stayed unusually quiet, occasionally rubbing her stomach. Sarah checked her temperature, normal, and tried to dismiss the growing unease in her own stomach. "Mommy," Emily whispered as Sarah tucked the blankets around her. "I don't want to take Daddy's special vitamins anymore. They taste yucky." "What special vitamins, honey?" Sarah asked, suddenly alert. "The ones way down deep," Emily mumbled, already drifting towards sleep. "He said they'd make me big and strong like him." Sarah sat in the dim glow of the nightlight, watching Emily's chest rise and fall. Michael had never mentioned any vitamins. In fact, they had specifically agreed on Emily's health regimen when they divorced 2 years ago. Her unease crystallized into something sharper, more defined. At 2 a.m., Sarah jolted awake to the sound of Emily crying. Racing to her daughter's room, she found the little girl curled into a ball, tears streaming down her face. "It hurts, Mommy," Emily whimpered. "It hurts way down deep." In that moment, Sarah knew Monday's plans would need to change. No school for Emily, no teaching for her. Instead, a visit to Dr. Chen first. Thing in the morning. Dr. Olivia Chen's pediatric office had always felt like a sanctuary to Sarah. The colorful walls adorned with children's artwork, the gentle background music, and Dr. Chen's calming presence usually put both Sarah and Emily at ease. But today, anxiety hung in the air like an invisible cloud. "Emily hasn't been herself since returning from her father's yesterday," Sarah explained as Dr. Chen reviewed the intake form. "She's been complaining about stomach pain, and she hardly touched breakfast this morning." Dr. Chen nodded, her kind eyes shifting to Emily, who sat quietly on the examination table, legs dangling over the edge. "And how are you feeling today, Emily? Can you show me where it hurts?" Emily hesitated before pointing to her lower abdomen. "Here, it feels funny." "Funny how?" Dr. Chen asked gently. "Like buzzing bees," Emily whispered. "All mixed up. Inside." Dr. Chen's expression remained neutral as she began her examination, chatting with Emily about school and friends. But Sarah noticed how the doctor's questions gradually shifted toward the weekend. "Did you do anything special with your daddy?" Dr. Chen asked casually, pressing gently on. Emily's stomach. Emily winced slightly. "We watched cartoons and Daddy made pancakes 3 times. 3 times? Dr. Chen smiled. "You must really love pancakes." Emily shook her head. "No, he kept forgetting he already made them. And then he gave me his special vitamins." Dr. Chen's hands paused. Momentarily. Special vitamins? What did these vitamins look like, Emily? They were in Daddy's bathroom, in the cabinet with all his other medicines. Emily's voice dropped to a whisper. "They didn't taste like my gummy vitamins. They tasted yucky." Sarah felt her phone vibrate. Michael had finally responded to her morning text. "Hope she feels better. She was singing about purple butterflies all weekend. Or was it blue dragonflies? She changes so fast." Sarah frowned. Emily hadn't mentioned butterflies or dragonflies, and the text seemed oddly disconnected from reality. "Emily," Dr. Chen continued, her voice maintaining that practiced, gentle tone. "When you say your tummy hurts way down deep, what do you mean?" "Yes, Mommy. It was way down deep," Emily repeated, her eyes wide and serious. "Daddy said the special vitamins go way down deep to make you strong." Something in Dr. Chen's expression changed, a subtle shift that sent a chill down Sarah's spine. The doctor made a few more notes, then smiled at Emily. "Emily, would you like to color a picture while I talk to your mom for a minute? Nancy will get you some crayons." Once they were in the hallway, Dr. Chen's professional demeanor remained intact, but her voice carried a new urgency. "Sarah, I'm concerned about Emily's symptoms and some of the things she's saying. I'd like to run some tests right away, and I think we should take her to Children's Hospital for a more comprehensive evaluation." "Is it that serious?" Sarah asked, her heart racing. "I thought it might just be a stomach bug, or it could be." Dr. Chen interrupted gently. "But some of Emily's symptoms and her comments about special vitamins concern me. Has Michael started Emily on any new medications or supplements that you're aware?" Sarah shook her head, anxiety blooming in her chest. "No, nothing. And his text messages have been strange, disconnected." Dr. Chen nodded, then excused herself to make a phone call. Through the partially open door, Sarah caught fragments. "Pediatric emergency, possible. Gestion, unclear what substance, parent custody situation." When Dr. Chen returned, her decision was clear. "I've called ahead to Children's Hospital. They're expecting us. And Sarah." She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I've also notified emergency services to meet us there. This is just a precaution, but Emily's well-being has to come first." The sound of approaching sirens filtered through the windows, punctuating the gravity of what had begun as a routine morning doctor's visit. The Children's Hospital loomed large and imposing, its colorful exterior doing little to calm Sarah's fraying nerves. The ambulance ride had been mercifully quick, with Emily fascinated by the flashing lights rather than frightened by them. Small blessings, Sarah thought, holding her daughter's hand as they were escorted through sliding glass doors. "Mom, why does it smell funny here?" Emily wrinkled her nose as they entered the emergency department. Sarah inhaled the familiar antiseptic scent common to all hospitals. "That's just the special cleaning they do to keep everyone healthy." Emily's reaction was unexpected. She recoiled, pressing her face into Sarah's shoulder. "No, it smells like Daddy's special vitamins." Her small body trembled. "I don't like that smell, Mommy. It makes my tummy remember." The triage nurse exchanged a meaningful glance with Dr. Chen, who had insisted on accompanying them. Within minutes, they were ushered into a private examination room where a team was already waiting. A pediatric doctor, a nurse, and a woman in casual clothes who introduced herself as Marissa Jenkins from Child Services. Sarah's stomach dropped. Child Services? Things were escalating faster than she could process. "It's standard procedure, Mrs. Bennett," Marissa explained, noting Sarah's expression. "We're just here to make sure Emily gets everything she needs." While a nurse drew blood from Emily's arm, the child remarkably brave, only a single tear escaping, Sarah stepped into the hallway to try Michael again. Her previous 3 calls had gone straight to voicemail. This time he answered. "Sarah, what's up?" Michael's voice sounded distant, confused. "Michael, we're at Children's Hospital. Emily's sick. She's been talking about special vitamins you gave her. Her doctor is concerned enough that there's a social worker here. What did you give her?" A long pause followed. "Hospital. Today's Tuesday, right? I don't have Emily on Tuesdays." Sarah's blood ran cold. "It's Monday, Michael. You had Emily all weekend. You dropped her off yesterday evening." "Monday? That can't be right." The confusion in his voice sounded genuine, which somehow frightened Sarah more than if he'd been defensive. "I have it written down. I pick her up Friday. Today's... Wait." Shuffling sounds came through the phone. "What day is it? Michael, focus. What medicines did you give Emily this weekend?" "Just her regular gummy vitamins," he said, then hesitated. "I think. Yes, those. From the purple bottle. She says they tasted bad and made her stomach hurt. She said they were your special vitamins from your medicine cabinet." Another long pause. I don't remember giving her anything else." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Sarah, sometimes I get confused lately. About small things, days, names, but I would never hurt Emily. You know that, right?" Sarah didn't know what to believe anymore. "Just get to the hospital, Michael, now." Back in the examination room, the pediatrician was gently pressing on Emily's stomach. "Emily, did your daddy give you something to swallow? Maybe pills or tablets?" Emily nodded solemnly. "He said they were special vitamins to make me big and strong like him." "Did they look like your usual vitamins?" Emily shook her head. "They weren't gummy bears. They were round and white. They tasted bad, so I told Daddy. But then later he gave me more and forgot I already took them." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. "Mrs. Bennett," the doctor said quietly, "we're going to need to run some tests to identify what Emily might have ingested. The good news is that her vital signs are stable." A nurse entered with preliminary blood test results, handing them to the doctor who studied them with a furrowed brow. "There are some concerning abnormalities here," she said carefully. "We'll need to do a more comprehensive toxicology panel." Marissa, the social worker, pulled Sarah aside. "Mrs. Bennett, I understand this is overwhelming, but I need to ask, has Michael shown any unusual behavior recently? Changes in personality, memory issues, confusion?" The question hit Sarah like a physical blow as she recalled Michael's disjointed text messages, his confusion about the day of the week, and Emily's comment about him making breakfast 3 times. Before she could answer, Emily's small voice cut through the room. "Daddy looks at me sometimes but doesn't see me, like his eyes are seeing something else." All eyes turned to the child, who was tracing patterns on the hospital blanket. "And what does Daddy do when that happens?" Marissa asked gently. Emily looked up, her eyes wide and earnest. "He gets scared, and then he forgets things." The hospital room grew quiet as night fell. Emily had finally drifted to sleep, monitored by machines that beeped softly in the darkness. Sarah sat in the uncomfortable recliner beside the bed, her mind racing through the day's events while her fingers absently scrolled through old emails on her phone. A gentle knock at the door announced Dr. Abrams, the pediatric specialist assigned to Emily's case. "How is she doing?" Dr. Abrams asked, checking the monitors. "Sleeping peacefully, finally," Sarah whispered. "Any news on the tests?" Dr. Abrams nodded. "The comprehensive toxicology report isn't complete yet, but we've identified elevated levels of a medication in Emily's system. It's a prescription drug, not something typically given to children." Sarah's heart clenched. "What kind of medication?" "It appears to be a medication sometimes prescribed for neurological conditions. We're still confirming." Dr. Abrams hesitated. "Mrs. Bennett, Has your ex-husband mentioned any health issues to you? Anything he might be taking? Medication for? Sarah shook her head slowly. No, nothing specific. We've been divorced for 2 years now and our communications are limited. Dr. Abrams nodded understandingly. I should also let you know that Dr. Chen's concerns have triggered a mandatory investigation. Child Protective. Services will be temporarily suspending your ex-husband's visitation rights until this situation is clarified. The news should have been alarming, but Sarah felt only a numb acceptance. Deep down, she'd known something was wrong for months. Michael's increasingly erratic emails, missed appointments, strange lapses in conversation when they discussed Emily's schedule. Has Michael arrived at the hospital? She asked. Not yet. Security will notify us when he does. After the doctor left, Sarah returned to her phone, scrolling through months of emails between her and Michael. She'd dismissed the oddities before, attributed them to stress or hastiness. Now they took on a more ominous quality. From Michael Bennett, on September 12th. Subject, next weekend plans. Sarah will pick Emily Friday as usual time, 5 p.m. correct? Want to take her to the aquarium new exhibit with the dolphins, but maybe also park if weather. Does she still like ice ream? M. The misspellings, missing spaces, fragmented thoughts, they'd become more frequent over time. Sarah had chalked it up to Michael typing quickly on his phone, but now she wondered. From Michael Bennett, October 18th. Subject, Parent-Teacher Conference. Sorry, missed the meeting. Got days confused. Was certain it was Thursday, not Tuesday. Can you send me the teacher's notes? Emily says school good. She likes the art and also science, but not so much the math, although she does it anyway because she's a good kid. Sorry again. About confusion. A memory surfaced. Emily's kindergarten graduation 4 months ago. Michael had shown up late, flustered, wearing mismatched socks. During the ceremony, Sarah had noticed him looking confused, momentarily lost, before recovering with a bright smile when Emily waved from the stage. The hospital room door opened again, and Marissa Jenkins, the social worker, entered with a child psychologist named Dr. Patterson. Mrs. Bennett, if you don't mind, we'd like to speak with Emily when she wakes up, Marissa explained. Just a gentle conversation to understand more about her. Weekend. I'd prefer to be present, Sarah said firmly. Dr. Patterson nodded. Of course, we encourage that. Emily stirred then, her eyes fluttering open. Mommy, can I have some water? Sarah helped her take a sip while the psychologist pulled a chair closer. Hello, Emily. My name is Dr. Patterson. I was hoping we could talk a little about your weekend with your daddy. Would that be okay? Emily nodded, still groggy from sleep. You mentioned that your daddy gave you some special vitamins. Can you tell me more about that? Emily's small fingers played with the edge of her blanket. He said they would make me strong, but they tasted yucky. And what was Daddy doing when he gave you these vitamins? Emily's brow furrowed in concentration. He was looking for his keys. He kept looking in the same places over and over. And then he talked to the TV when it wasn't even on. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Does Daddy do that a lot? Talk to things that aren't there? Dr. Patterson asked gently. Emily nodded. Sometimes, and sometimes he looks at me but doesn't see me, like he's looking through me. She demonstrated by staring vacantly past the doctor. Like this. And then he calls me the wrong name or asks me the same question lots of times. Dr. Patterson exchanged a significant glance with Marissa. Emily, Sarah asked carefully, why didn't you tell me about these things before? Emily's answer cut straight to Sarah's heart. Because Daddy said he was just tired, and he made me pinky promise not to tell you he was being silly. He said it would make you worry and then you wouldn't let me visit anymore. Detective Lisa Morales and her partner, Detective James Wilson, stood in the center of Michael Bennett's living room, taking in the contradictions before them. The apartment was simultaneously meticulous and chaotic, books perfectly aligned on shelves, yet mail scattered across the coffee table, kitchen spotless, but the refrigerator contained 3 open cartons of the same orange juice. "Mr. Bennett hasn't arrived yet?" Detective Morales asked the building manager who had let them in. The manager shook his head. "Haven't seen him since yesterday. He's usually quiet, keeps to himself. Good tenant, always pays on time." Detective Wilson moved toward the hallway. "I'll check the bathroom, specifically the medicine cabinet." The bathroom revealed the most telling contradictions. Toothbrush perfectly centered in its holder, towels folded with military precision. But the medicine cabinet told a different story. "Lisa, look at this," Wilson called out. The cabinet was crowded with prescription bottles, some with labels partially peeled off, others neatly arranged by size rather than by function. Wilson carefully photographed everything before examining individual bottles. "Multiple prescriptions, different doctors," he noted. "Some of these are pretty serious neurological medications." In the kitchen, Detective Morales found a calendar on the refrigerator door. Multiple appointments were crossed out and rewritten. Notes in increasingly shaky handwriting filled the margins. "Remember to buy Emily's favorite cereal, purple box. Parent-teacher meeting Tuesday or Thursday. And most tellingly, remember to take meds before picking up Emily." The detectives were cataloging the evidence when a knock at the door revealed Mrs. Gladwell, the elderly neighbor from across the hall. "I saw police cars downstairs," she said, concern etched on her face. "Is Michael all right? Is it about what happened last Wednesday?" Detective Morales raised an eyebrow. "What happened Wednesday, ma'am?" Mrs. Gladwell wrung her hands. "I found him wandering the hallway in his pajamas at 3 in the afternoon. He seemed confused. Said he was looking for his daughter, but it wasn't his weekend with Emily. When I reminded him, he looked so embarrassed, poor man." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "He hasn't been the same lately. Last month he brought my newspaper to me, acting like it was a normal neighborly gesture. But he brought me 6 days' worth all at once, saying he'd been saving them. I didn't have the heart to tell him I never subscribed to that paper." Detective Morales's phone rang. "Morales," she answered. "He's there? Good. We're on our way." She turned to her partner. "Michael Bennett just arrived at the hospital. Apparently, he forgot his own daughter was admitted." As they prepared to leave, Detective Wilson held up a half-empty prescription bottle he'd found on the bedroom nightstand. The label was partially obscured, but one word was clearly visible: neurodegenerative. His phone pinged with an incoming text. It was from the hospital lab. Toxicology. Results: patient Emily Bennett shows presence of Zolantine in bloodstream. Classified as adult neurological medication, not approved for pediatric use. "Lisa," he said gravely, "I think we just found our answer." The hospital waiting room felt like a stage where different worlds were colliding. In one corner, Sarah sat with her sister Jen, who had driven 3 hours to provide support. Across the room, 2 police detectives conferred in hushed tones. And pacing near the vending machines was Michael, looking disheveled and disoriented, accompanied by his lawyer, a hastily contacted family friend named Robert. Down the hall in the child psychology office, Emily sat at a small table covered with art supplies. Dr. Patterson watched as the little girl carefully selected a blue crayon. "Can you draw a picture of your weekend with Daddy?" Dr. Patterson asked gently. Emily nodded, her pigtails bouncing slightly as she began to draw. Her small hand moved with purpose across the paper, creating a house, a stick figure of herself, and a taller figure meant to be her father. "Tell me about your drawing," Dr. Patterson encouraged when Emily put down the crayon. "This is Daddy's apartment," Emily explained, pointing to different elements. "This is me, and this is Daddy looking for his glasses even though they were on his head the whole time." She giggled at the memory. Then her face grew serious as she pointed to a small cabinet she had drawn in the corner. "And this is where Daddy keeps his special vitamins that taste yucky. Was Daddy angry when he gave you those vitamins?" Dr. Patterson asked carefully. Emily shook her head emphatically. "No, Daddy's never angry. He was just confused." She selected a yellow crayon and added something to the drawing. He kept calling me by the wrong name that day. He called me Emma. That's not my name. She looked up, her eyes wide with childlike concern. I think Daddy's brain gets tired sometimes. Back in the waiting room, Detective Morales approached Michael and his lawyer. Mr. Bennett, we'd like to ask you some questions about Emily's medication incident. Michael looked up, his eyes bloodshot from what appeared to be a combination of stress and exhaustion. I would never hurt my daughter, he said immediately. Never. No one's saying you would intentionally harm Emily, Detective Morales replied. But we found some concerning items in your apartment. She held up a photo of the medicine cabinet. Can you explain why this prescription bottle of Zolantine was found with its label partially removed? This is the same medication found in Emily's system. Michael stared at the photo, genuine confusion, washing over his face. I don't remember removing any labels. Why would I do that? His lawyer placed a cautioning hand on his arm, but Michael continued, his voice breaking. I take that for my headaches. My doctor prescribed it a few months ago. Zolantine isn't primarily a headache medication, Mr. Bennett, Detective Wilson interjected. It's prescribed for neurological conditions. Michael's face flushed. The headaches they're part of something else the doctor is monitoring. It's nothing serious. The tremor in his hands belied his words. Mr. Bennett, Detective Morales said, her voice softening slightly. Can you walk us through your weekend with Emily? Specifically, any medications you gave her? Michael's eyes grew distant, as if he were mentally rewinding through memories that seemed just out of reach. Saturday morning we had breakfast. Pancakes, I think. Then we went to the park? No, it was raining. We stayed in and watched movies. His brow furrowed with the effort of recall. Sunday. His voice trailed off, panic rising in his expression. I don't remember parts of Sunday, he finally admitted, the words barely audible. It happens sometimes, short periods I can't account for. And the medications, Mr. Bennett? Detective Wilson pressed. Michael's eyes filled with tears. I only remember giving her gummy vitamins, the purple bottle, but he looked down at his shaking hands. Sometimes I get confused. About which medicines are which. The detectives exchanged glances as Michael buried his face in his hands. I would never hurt Emily, he repeated, his voice muffled and broken. She's everything to me. Across the hall, Emily had completed another drawing, this one showing her father, asleep on the couch, a speech bubble over his head containing scrambled letters that made no words at all. Sometimes, Emily told Dr. Patterson earnestly, Daddy talks funny when he's really tired, like the words get all mixed up coming out of his mouth. Dr. Patterson nodded, adding this crucial detail to her growing file of observations that pointed to something far more complex than simple negligence. A light rain tapped against the hospital windows as Emily's condition continued to improve. The medication was slowly leaving her system, and her stomachache had subsided to occasional discomfort. Sarah sat beside her daughter's bed, reading aloud from Emily's favorite storybook, when a hospital volunteer appeared at the door. Mrs. Bennett? There's someone here to see Emily. And Eleanor Bennett? Sarah's stomach tightened. Michael's mother, her former mother-in-law, whom she hadn't seen since the divorce finalization 2 years ago. It's Grandma Ellie, Emily exclaimed, her face lighting up for the first time since their hospital ordeal began. Eleanor Bennett appeared in the doorway, a dignified woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair and Michael's same hazel eyes. She carried a small suitcase and a plush elephant, Emily's favorite animal. I caught the first flight when Robert called me, Eleanor explained, her voice tight with worry as she embraced her granddaughter. Emily, sweetheart, I've missed you so much. While Emily happily showed her grandmother the elephant collection she'd accumulated on her hospital bed, a nurse pulled Sarah aside. Dr. Abrams would like to speak with you. Emily will be fine with her grandmother for a few minutes. In a small consultation room, Sarah found not only Dr. Abrams but also Detective Morales and Dr. Patterson. "We've been comparing notes," Dr. Abrams began, "and a concerning pattern is emerging about Michael's behavior." Dr. Patterson opened a folder containing Emily's drawings. "Emily's artwork and our conversations reveal something important. She doesn't fear her father. She's concerned about him. Notice how she draws him looking confused or tired, as she puts it." Detective Morales added, "Neighbors report instances of disorientation. His apartment shows signs of someone trying desperately to maintain order despite cognitive difficulties. Post-it notes everywhere. Reminders. Lists. The toxicology results confirm Emily ingested Zolantine," Dr. Abrams explained. "It's primarily prescribed for certain progressive neurological conditions. The dosage in her system suggests she received what would be a single adult dose, possibly mistaken for a vitamin." Sarah's mind flashed back to scattered moments over the past year. Michael showing up at the wrong time for pickups, calling her with questions about things they'd just discussed, his increasingly disjointed emails. "Are you suggesting Michael is ill?" Sarah asked quietly. "We can't make a medical diagnosis without proper evaluation," Dr. Abrams cautioned. "But the evidence points to some kind of cognitive impairment." Back in Emily's room, a very different conversation was taking place. Eleanor sat close to her granddaughter, examining the latest elephant addition to the collection. "This one has big ears, just like Grandpa's," Emily giggled. Eleanor's smile faltered slightly. "Yes, he did have rather prominent ears, didn't he?" "I never met Grandpa," Emily said matter-of-factly. "Daddy said he went to heaven before I was born." Eleanor nodded, a shadow crossing her face. "That's right, sweetheart." "Was Grandpa sick like Daddy gets sometimes?" Emily asked innocently. Eleanor's hand froze mid-air. "What do you mean, Emily?" "Daddy forgets things, and sometimes he looks scared for no reason, and he talks to people who aren't there." Emily tilted her head. "Is that why he gives himself so many medicines? To fix his brain when it gets tired?" Eleanor's face paled. Before she could respond, Sarah returned to the room. "Emily, honey, the doctors want to do one more quick test. Would you mind going with Nurse Patty for a few minutes?" Once Emily had left with the nurse, the two women regarded each other in tense silence. "How long have you known?" Sarah finally asked. "Known what?" Eleanor's voice was carefully neutral. "That something's wrong with Michael. Medically wrong." Eleanor's composed facade cracked slightly. "He made me promise not to tell anyone. He's so much like his father, too proud to admit when something's wrong." "His father," Sarah echoed. Eleanor reached into her purse and withdrew a worn photograph, a family portrait from decades earlier. A young Michael stood smiling beside a tall man with the same jawline and hazel eyes. "Jonathan didn't just pass away," Eleanor said softly. "He suffered from early-onset Huntington's disease. It took him slowly, beginning when he was only 38. Her eyes met Sarah's. The same age Michael is now. Sarah felt as though the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. "Michael was tested years ago," Eleanor continued, her voice breaking. "The results were concerning, but he refused to believe it, refused to discuss it, said he was perfectly fine. All this time," Sarah whispered, "and he never told me." Eleanor wiped away a tear. "Some shadows are too frightening to acknowledge, even when they're your own." The small conference room in the hospital's administrative wing had become the unofficial headquarters for what was now clearly not a case of parental misconduct, but something far more complex. Detective Morales had stepped back, allowing medical professionals to take the lead as the focus shifted from investigation to intervention. Michael sat at the center of attention, his lawyer Robert beside him, while Dr. Abrams reviewed notes with a neurologist who had been called in. Dr. Richardson, a specialist in degenerative conditions. Across the table, Sarah and Eleanor maintained an uneasy alliance bound by their shared concern for both Emily and Michael. "Mr. Bennett," Dr. Richardson began gently, "I'd like to ask you some basic cognitive assessment questions. Are you comfortable with that?" Michael nodded tersely. his fingers drumming nervously on the table. What day of the week is it today? Michael hesitated. Wednesday. No, Tuesday. It was Monday. Can you count backward from 100 by sevens? 100, 93, 86, 79. Michael paused, his brow furrowing. 72, 65, 58. Another pause, longer this time. 51. The confidence drained from his voice. I'm sorry, I lost track. Dr. Richardson maintained a neutral expression. That's fine. Now, can you tell me about the last meal you had with Emily before she came home? Michael's eyes brightened. Of course, we had pancakes for dinner. Emily loves when we have breakfast for dinner. I put chocolate chips in them. Shaped like a smiley face. He smiled at the memory. And what did you do after dinner? The smile faded. We watched a movie, one of those animated ones with the singing princesses. Which one? Sarah asked quietly. Michael looked at her blankly. The one she likes with the ice. Frozen? Sarah suggested. Yes, that's it. Michael nodded too enthusiastically. We watched Frozen. Michael, Sarah said carefully. Emily says you didn't watch any movies this weekend. She said you tried to but fell asleep on the couch. Confusion washed over Michael's face. No, that's not right. We definitely watched. His voice trailed off, uncertainty replacing conviction. Didn't we? Dr. Richardson made a note. Mr. Bennett, have you been experiencing any other symptoms recently? Headaches? Coordination issues? Mood changes? Michael's lawyer started to interject, but Michael held up his hand. It's okay, Robert. He took a deep breath. The headaches started about 8 months ago. Then I began noticing gaps, moments I couldn't account for. I'd find myself in rooms without remembering why I went there. I'd repeat conversations without realizing it. His voice quavered. I thought it was just stress. The divorce, work pressure, adjusting to part-time parenting. I told myself I was fine. Why didn't you tell me? Sarah asked, unable to keep the hurt from her voice. Michael looked at her with eyes full of regret. I was afraid you'd take Emily away if you knew. Something was wrong with me. Being her father is the only thing I have left. Eleanor reached over to squeeze her son's hand. Michael, what about the prescription medications? There were quite a few in your apartment. Michael's expression darkened. Different doctors. When one treatment didn't work, I'd find another doctor. None of them knew about each other. I thought I could fix this myself. Dr. Richardson exchanged glances with Dr. Abrams. Mr. Bennett, given your family history and current symptoms, I'd like to run some comprehensive tests. Neuroimaging, genetic screening, cognitive assessments. The weight of what was happening finally seemed to crash down on Michael. His shoulders slumped as he buried his face in his hands. I don't remember giving Emily any of my medication, he whispered, his voice breaking. What kind of father doesn't remember? Something like that? What kind of father puts his child in danger? The room fell silent until Detective Morales, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. The kind who's sick and needs help, Mr. Bennett, not punishment. Down the hall, Emily was showing her latest drawing to Dr. Patterson. It depicted 3 figures, Emily, Sarah, and Michael, all holding hands. Above Michael's head was a dark cloud with a question mark inside it. Daddy's brain has a storm inside it sometimes, Emily explained with the simple wisdom of children. That's why he gets confused. Dr. Patterson studied the wife drawing. You're a very understanding little girl, Emily. Emily looked up, her eyes serious beyond her years. Daddy still loves me even when his brain is stormy, and I still love him too. The child psychologist made a note that would later prove crucial. Patient shows no fear of father. Demonstrates unusual empathy and understanding for age. Family support critical to positive outcome. The hospital cafeteria was nearly empty in the late afternoon lull between lunch and dinner. Sarah stirred her untouched coffee while Eleanor gazed out the window at the children's playground, where young patients in wheelchairs and with IV poles enjoyed a brief escape from their hospital rooms. You should have told me, Eleanor, Sarah said finally, breaking the uncomfortable silence. 2 years of co-parenting, and you never once mentioned that Michael might have inherited a serious condition? Eleanor turned from the window, her expression a complex mixture of guilt and defensiveness. Michael swore me to secrecy. After the divorce, he was terrified of losing Emily. This isn't about the divorce, Sarah insisted. This is about Emily's safety, about Michael's health. No, Eleanor sighed, her shoulders sagging. But you have to understand, watching my husband deteriorate. She paused, collecting herself. Jonathan was brilliant, a professor of literature. The disease took everything, his career, his dignity, eventually even his ability to recognize his own son. Sarah's anger softened slightly. And now Michael is showing the same symptoms? Similar, yes. The forgetfulness, the confusion. Eleanor hesitated, then added, but there's something else I haven't told anyone yet. Something about Jonathan's condition. Before she could continue, Dr. A. Richardson appeared at their table. Mrs. Bennett, both Mrs. Bennetts, Michael has agreed to comprehensive testing. We're scheduling an MRI and genetic panels for tomorrow morning. What exactly are you looking for? Sarah asked. Given the family history Mrs. Bennett Sr. has shared about her late husband, we're investigating several possibilities. Huntington's disease is one, but there are other neurological conditions with similar initial presentations. Eleanor shifted uncomfortably in her seat, drawing the doctor's attention. Is there something else we should know, Mrs. Bennett? He asked. Eleanor opened her mouth, then closed it again. Just that Jonathan's condition progressed quite rapidly once it was diagnosed. If Michael has the same thing, Dr. Richardson nodded sympathetically. We'll know more after the tests. In the meantime, Child Protective Services is preparing a temporary custody recommendation. Sarah's heart sank. They're still pursuing a case? It's protocol when a child is endangered, even unintentionally, Dr. Richardson explained. But Detective Morales is advocating for a medical intervention approach rather than a punitive one. After the doctor left, Sarah turned back to Eleanor. What were you about to tell me about Jonathan's condition? Eleanor seemed to wrestle with herself before answering. Just that it was complicated. The doctors never fully agreed on. She trailed off, then stood abruptly. I should check on Michael. Sarah watched her former mother-in-law hurry away, certain she was still hiding something crucial. Down the hall, Emily sat cross-legged on her hospital bed, helping a child life specialist create a feeling chart with stickers and colored markers. This is how I feel when Mommy reads me stories, Emily explained, placing a yellow happy face sticker on the chart. And this is how I feel when I have to take yucky medicine. A green sick face sticker joined the chart. What about how you feel when you're with your daddy? The specialist asked carefully. Emily considered the question, then selected a D sticker with a confused expression. Sometimes Daddy makes me feel like this. She placed the sticker on the chart, then unexpectedly added a heart beside it. But I still love him, and he loves me. Even when he gave you medicine that made you sick? Emily nodded earnestly. He didn't mean to. His brain gets mixed up sometimes, like when he showed me pictures of a lady and said it was his mommy, but it wasn't Grandma Ellie. It was someone else. The specialist made a note. Do you remember who he said it was? He said it was his other mommy, the one who took care of him when he was little, but not his real mommy. Emily shrugged. It didn't make sense. Meanwhile, in the hospital chapel, Eleanor Bennett knelt alone in the dim light, tears streaming down her face as she whispered what sounded like a prayer. I'm sorry, Jonathan. I tried to keep our secret. I tried to protect Michael from the truth, but I can't do it anymore. Not after what happened to Emily. She pulled from her purse the same family photograph she'd shown Sarah, but this time she turned it over. On the back, written in faded ink, were the words, Jonathan Michael, age 8, and Eleanor Bennett, adoptive mother. 1994. "The truth always finds its way into the light," she whispered, "no matter how deeply we try to bury it." Morning sunlight streamed through the hospital windows as Dr. Richardson reviewed Michael's preliminary test results. His expression grew increasingly concerned with each page he turned. "We need to expedite the genetic testing," he told his colleague. "These cognitive assessment scores are concerning for someone his age." Across the hospital, Sarah sat in the small family resource center, laptop open as she searched for information about neurological diseases. Her teacher's instinct for research had kicked in, transforming anxiety into action. Scattered beside her were printouts of Michael's old emails, text messages, and notes from Emily's previous visits, a timeline of subtle changes she'd overlooked. A familiar prescription receipt caught her eye, one she'd found in Emily's backpack months ago. Michael had explained it was for stress medication. Now, with newfound awareness, she recognized the medication name, Zolantine, the same drug found in Emily's system. "Sarah?" She looked up to find Detective Morales in the doorway. "We found something in Michael's apartment you should see." The detective handed her a small leather-bound journal. Inside, in Michael's increasingly unsteady handwriting, were daily notes he'd been keeping. March 15th. Forgot Emily's teacher's name again. Made excuse about being tired. Headache worse today. April 2nd. Put cereal in, refrigerator, milk in cabinet. Emily laughed. Played it off as a joke. Terrified. May 20th. Researched symptoms online. Too many possibilities. Too frightening to face. The last entry, dated just a week before the incident, sent chills down Sarah's spine. "I'm losing time now. Blank spaces in my day I can't account for. What if it happens when I'm with Emily? What if I'm becoming like him?" Eleanor appeared in the doorway, her face drawn with worry and lack of sleep. "Sarah, there's something about Michael's father, about our family, that you need to know. Something I've kept hidden for too long." Before Eleanor could continue, a nurse rushed in. "Mrs. Bennett, Dr. Richardson needs you immediately. It's about Michael." Sarah hurried down the hospital corridor, Eleanor struggling to keep pace behind her. They found Dr. Richardson outside Michael's testing room, his expression grave as he reviewed images on a tablet. "What's happened? Is Michael all right?" Sarah asked, breathless. "Physically, yes," Dr. Richardson assured her. "But during the MRI, he became extremely agitated, almost panicked. He kept repeating that he couldn't remember driving Emily home on Sunday. But he did." "Drive her home," Sarah said. "I was there when he dropped her off." Dr. Richardson nodded. "That's what concerns me. These episodes of memory loss are increasing in frequency. The preliminary scans show some concerning patterns that would align with several possible neurological conditions." Eleanor stepped forward, her hands trembling slightly. "Doctor, before you continue, there's something I need to share." She took a deep breath. "Something about Jonathan, Michael's father, that changes everything." Both Sarah and Dr. Richardson turned to her expectantly. "Jonathan wasn't Michael's biological father," Eleanor said quietly. "And I'm not his biological mother. We adopted Michael when he was 4 years old." Sarah stared in shock. "What? But all these years, the family photos, the stories about how he looks like his father. We wanted him to feel like he truly belonged," Eleanor explained, her voice breaking. "Jonathan was diagnosed with Huntington's disease when Michael was 8. We decided then that Michael should believe it was his family legacy, his genetics, so he would be vigilant about his health as an adult." "You lied to your son about his own medical history, Doctor?" Richardson asked, professional detachment giving way to disbelief. "We thought we were protecting him," Eleanor whispered. "But when Jonathan's condition worsened, something unexpected happened. Michael became convinced he would inherit the disease. He began seeing similarities between himself and his father that weren't there. Even as a teenager, he'd point out symptoms that were just normal adolescent clumsiness or forgetfulness." Dr. Richardson's expression shifted from confusion to dawning comprehension. "You're describing the nocebo effect, when negative expectations actually produce physical symptoms. Jonathan died when Michael was 17, Eleanor continued. By then, Michael was so fixated on the idea that he would inherit the disease that he refused genetic testing. He said he didn't want to know when his clock would start ticking. Sarah tried to process this. Revelation. So, Michael doesn't have Huntington's? His symptoms are… That's just it, Eleanor said. I don't know anymore. The symptoms seem so real now. But they began right around his 38th birthday, exactly when Jonathan's symptoms had started. Dr. Richardson tapped thoughtfully on his tablet. The mind-body connection is powerful. I've seen cases where patients manifest physical symptoms based purely on psychological expectation, but I've never seen it progress to this extent. What does this mean for Michael's diagnosis? Sarah asked. Before the doctor could respond, a nurse appeared at the door. Dr. Richardson, Mr. Bennett is asking for you. He seems quite distressed. They hurried into the room where Michael sat on the edge of the examination table, his face pale. I remembered something, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Something about Sunday with Emily. His eyes met Sarah's, filled with horror and remorse. I think I'm like my dad, Sarah. I think it's starting. The hospital conference room had taken on the somber atmosphere of a courtroom as Dr. Richardson presented his findings to the assembled group, Sarah, Eleanor, Michael, looking exhausted but more lucid than he had been in days. His lawyer, Robert, Detective Morales, and Dr. Chen, who had been the first to raise the alarm. What we're dealing with is complex, Dr. Richardson began, arranging his notes carefully. Michael's symptoms present like several neurological conditions, but the test results are unusual. He displayed the first brain scan on a screen. This shows activity patterns consistent with significant stress and anxiety, but not the structural changes we'd expect to see with Huntington's disease. Eleanor let out a small, involuntary sound, half relief, half confusion. However, the doctor continued, the cognitive tests show genuine impairment. The blood work revealed concerning levels of several medications, some prescribed, others over-the-counter sleep aids and anti-anxiety supplements, all with potentially interactive effects. Michael stared at his hands. I've been taking whatever might help. Different doctors, different prescriptions. Self-medicating a condition you believed was inevitable, Dr. Richardson nodded. Which brings us to the psychological component. He looked directly at Eleanor. Mrs. Bennett, your revelation about Michael's adoption and the family narrative around Huntington's disease provides crucial context. Michael has been living for decades with the expectation of developing this condition. Are you saying it's all in my head? Michael asked, a defensive edge to his voice. Not at all, the doctor assured him. Your symptoms are very real. What we're looking at is a complex interaction between psychological expectation, physical symptoms, and the neurological effects of multiple medications. He displayed another scan. This shows disrupted sleep patterns and altered neurotransmitter levels. Consistent with your medication cocktail. Simply put, you've been caught in a downward spiral, expecting symptoms, experiencing anxiety about those expectations, self-medicating that anxiety, and experiencing side effects that further convinced you the disease was progressing. Then the incident. With Emily, Sarah began. Dr. Richardson nodded gravely. The combination of medications affected Michael's judgment and memory. In a moment of confusion, he likely mistook his own medication for Emily's vitamins. A genuine mistake caused by very real cognitive impairment. Just not the impairment he believed he had. Detective Morales leaned forward. So from a legal standpoint, we're looking at unintentional harm due to a medical condition? Yes, Dr. Richardson confirmed, but a condition that requires immediate intervention, just a different kind than we initially thought. Eleanor reached for her son's hand. Michael, I'm so sorry. We thought we were protecting you by not telling you were adopted. Then when Jonathan got sick, it seemed easier to let you believe it was a family condition rather than explain the truth. A lie that shaped my entire life, Michael said. Quietly, Every time I forgot something, every moment of clumsiness, I thought, it's starting. I've been waiting for this disease since I was a child. Dr. Chen, who had been silent until now, addressed the room. This case illustrates how powerful silence can be, how family secrets can cause as much damage as the truths they're meant to hide. Michael looked up, his eyes clearer than they had been in days. What happens now? Medically supervised detox from your current medications, Dr. Richardson explained. Then cognitive behavioral therapy to address the psychological aspects, and proper evaluation for any underlying conditions once your system is clear. Sarah, who had been processing everything in stunned silence, finally spoke. And Emily? What do we tell her? The truth, Michael said firmly, surprising everyone. That Daddy got sick because he was taking the wrong medicine, and didn't tell anyone he needed help. That secrets made everything worse. He paused, vulnerability washing over his features. And that I'm getting better now. For the first time since the ordeal began, the heavy clouds of suspicion and fear seemed to be lifting, replaced by something tentatively hopeful, the first fragile steps toward healing. 2 weeks after Emily's hospitalization, Sarah sat in the elementary school principal's office, facing an uncomfortable conversation she'd been dreading. Principal Winters, a normally warm woman in her 50s, looked troubled as she slid a folder across her desk. These are the emails I've received from 3 sets of parents, she explained gently. They're concerned about having their children in the same class as Emily after what happened. Sarah's heart sank as she skimmed the messages, each more thinly veiled than the last in their implications. Words like unstable home environment and safety concerns for our children jumped out from the pages. The story made the local news, Principal Winters continued, and unfortunately, social media has filled in the blanks with speculation. Most people only heard that Emily was hospitalized after ingesting her father's medication. The details about Michael's condition weren't made public. Sarah closed the folder, fighting to maintain her composure. So what happens now? Emily loves her class, her teacher, her friends. She's been through enough already. The principal nodded sympathetically. I agree completely. That's why I wanted to discuss some options with you before tomorrow's parent council meeting, where I suspect this will come up. Outside in the waiting area, Emily was happily reading with the school secretary, blissfully unaware of the adult complications swirling around her. Later that afternoon, Sarah pushed her shopping cart through the grocery store, trying to focus on her list rather than the whispers and glances that followed her down each aisle. Word traveled fast in their small community, and the hospital incident had become the topic of playground chatter and coffee shop speculation. That's her, she heard a woman whisper to her friend as Sarah selected apples. The one whose ex gave drugs to their daughter. I heard he's mentally unstable, came the reply, just loud enough for Sarah to hear. My sister's neighbor works at the hospital, said there's more to the story than they're telling. Sarah abandoned her half-filled cart and hurried out of the store, tears of frustration burning behind her eyes. At home, her phone pinged with a text from Dr. Chen. Are we still on for coffee tomorrow? I'd like to discuss something important. Before Sarah could reply, another message appeared, this one from Eleanor. Meeting with Michael's treatment team went well. He's making progress. Can we talk about visitation possibilities with Emily soon? The competing demands and complications felt overwhelming. Sarah sank onto the couch, allowing herself a rare moment of unguarded emotion. The sound of small footsteps on the stairs pulled her back to the present. Emily appeared in her pajamas, clutching a drawing. Mommy, I made this for Daddy. Can we send it to him at the special doctor place? Sarah wiped her eyes quickly and examined the crayon creation. A colorful scene showing Michael, Emily, and Sarah, all holding hands under a smiling sun. Above Michael's head was a small cloud, but rays of sunshine were breaking through it. It's to remind him that the storm in his brain is getting smaller. Emily explained with the simple wisdom that continued to amaze Sarah. It's beautiful, sweetie, Sarah managed, her throat tight with emotion. Daddy will love it. When can I see him? Emily asked, the question Sarah had been dreading. Before she could formulate a response, her phone rang. Michael's. Lawyer, Robert. Sarah, I've just left the family court hearing about the temporary custody arrangements, he said without preamble. Given the medical context, the judge is inclined to restore limited visitation rights once Michael completes his initial treatment program. But there's a complication. Sarah braced herself. What now? The story has attracted attention beyond our local news. A national morning show wants to feature it as part of a series on family health crises. They're framing it as a cautionary tale. Sarah watched Emily return upstairs with her drawing, innocent and unknowing of how her private pain was becoming public spectacle. Tell them absolutely not, she said firmly. Emily's story is not entertainment, and neither is Michael's struggle. As she hung up, Sarah realized that protecting her family now meant fighting not just medical challenges and legal complications, but also the court of public opinion, where judgment came swiftly and mercy was in short supply. The Cedar Grove Wellness Center sat on the outskirts of town, its modern architecture and landscaped gardens designed to feel more like a retreat than a treatment facility. Sarah guided Emily up the stone path, the child clutching both her mother's hand and the carefully rolled drawing she'd made for her father. Remember what we talked about, sweetie? Sarah asked gently. Daddy has been taking medicine to help his brain feel better, and the doctors here are helping him learn how to stay healthy. Emily nodded solemnly. Like when I had strep throat and had to take all my medicine even when I started feeling better. That's right, Sarah smiled, amazed once again by her daughter's capacity for understanding. At the reception desk, they were greeted warmly and led to a bright common room where Michael waited, looking markedly different from when they'd last seen him at the hospital. The dark circles under his eyes had faded, his posture was straighter, and his hands, once constantly trembling, were steady as he rose to greet them. Emily, he exclaimed, kneeling to her level but maintaining the slight distance that had been agreed upon beforehand. I've missed you so much. Emily hesitated only briefly before rushing into her father's arms, the weeks of separation dissolving in an instant of connection. Sarah watched, her heart full of complicated emotions, relief, lingering concern, cautious hope. A staff therapist observed discreetly from nearby, there to support the visit and intervene if needed. But the reunion proceeded smoothly, with Emily proudly presenting her drawing and chattering about school. I changed classes, she explained. Matter-of-factly, my new teacher is Mrs. Rodriguez. She has a guinea pig named Muffin who lives in our classroom. Michael glanced questioningly at Sarah, who mouthed later over Emily's head. As Emily explored the children's corner of the common room, Michael and Sarah sat at a small table by the window. The school situation got complicated, Sarah explained in a low voice. Some parents raised concerns. It seemed easier to move Emily than fight that battle right now. Michael's face fell. I'm so sorry. I never wanted any of this to touch her life. It has, Sarah said simply, but she's resilient. And honestly, the new teacher is wonderful with her. She paused. How are you really doing, Michael? He ran a hand through his hair, a familiar gesture that reminded Sarah of earlier, easier days. It's been intense. Detoxing from all those medications was physically tough, but the psychological work has been even harder. Coming to terms with the fact that you're not actually destined to inherit Huntington's? That, yes, but also facing how much of my life has been shaped by fear and avoidance. He looked toward Emily, who was showing her drawing to an elderly patient. I let the fear of becoming like my father, who wasn't even my biological father, consume me. I was so focused on the disease I thought was inevitable that I missed what was actually happening. Sarah noticed the leather-bound journal on the table, the same one Detective Morales had shown her, filled with Michael's daily observations of his symptoms. I'm keeping a different kind of journal now, Michael explained, following her gaze, focusing on clarity and honesty instead of fear. Their conversation was interrupted by Dr. Chen, who had arrived for a previously arranged meeting with both parents. I wanted to talk to you both about something important, she said after greeting Emily warmly. This experience has shown me a gap in our community's health services, a lack of support for families dealing with neurological and psychological health challenges. She opened her laptop, revealing a presentation titled, Breaking the Silence: Community Support for Family Health Challenges. I'm starting a program that would provide resources, education, and support groups, and, if you're comfortable, I'd like to include your story, anonymized of course, as a case study in how silence around health issues can create unintended consequences. Michael and Sarah exchanged looks, a moment of perfect understanding passing between them. If it helps other families avoid what we've gone through, Michael said, then yes. As they discussed the details, Emily returned to show her father another drawing she'd started, this one showing a classroom with a small cage containing what appeared to be a fuzzy brown blob. That's Muffin, she explained seriously. My new class has show and tell on Fridays. Could you come someday, Daddy? When you're all better? The simple question hung in the air, representing everything Michael was working toward, a future where he could be present, reliable, healthy for his daughter. I'd like that very much, he said, his voice steady with newfound determination. I'm working hard to be there, Emily. I promise. 6 months later, the elementary school. Auditorium buzzed with excitement as parents settled into uncomfortable folding chairs, programs clutched in hand for the spring performance. Our community heroes, the cover proclaimed in bright, childish lettering. Sarah saved seats in the third row, checking her watch nervously as the minutes ticked closer to showtime. Eleanor arrived first, elegant as always but more relaxed than Sarah had ever seen her. Any sign of him? Eleanor asked, arranging her purse beneath the seat. Not yet, Sarah replied, trying to mask her concern. He promised Emily he wouldn't miss it. The lights dimmed. Once a 5-minute warning, parents scrambled to their seats. Still no Michael. Then, just as the principal approached the microphone to welcome everyone, a familiar figure appeared at the auditorium door. Michael scanned the crowd, spotting Sarah and Eleanor with visible relief as he made his way. To their row, Sarah noticed he looked healthy, clear-eyed and steady on his feet, though moving carefully through the crowd. Sorry, he whispered, taking the seat they'd saved. The bus was running late. Such a simple explanation, yet it represented enormous progress. Michael had accepted that his medication regimen made driving unsafe. Instead of hiding his condition or fighting the restriction, he had adapted, taking public transportation, planning extra time for delays, prioritizing safety over pride. The curtains opened to reveal a stage full of first graders dressed as various community helpers, police officers, firefighters, teachers, doctors. Emily stood proudly in a white coat and toy stethoscope, representing healthcare workers. When it was her class's turn to perform, Emily stepped forward for her solo line. Doctors and nurses help people get better, even when they're sick in ways you can't see with your eyes. Michael's hand found Sarah's in the darkness, a brief, gentle squeeze of acknowledgement. On his other side, Eleanor dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. The journey of the past 6 months had been neither simple nor perfect. Michael continued with therapy and medication management. The court-mandated supervised visitation had only recently been relaxed to allow him more normal time with Emily. Dr. Chen's community program had taken root, with all 3 adults now involved as advocates. Most importantly, the wall of silence that had divided their family had crumbled. Emily understood, in age-appropriate terms, about her father's health challenges. Michael had embraced honesty about his needs and limitations, and Sarah had found a new role not as Michael's wife, but as his co-parent and ally in creating stability for their daughter. After the performance, Emily ran to them backstage, still wearing her doctor costume. "You all came," she exclaimed, looking from her mother to her grandmother to her father with shining eyes. "We wouldn't have missed it for anything," Michael said, kneeling to her level despite the difficulty it caused his still recovering balance. "Did you see? I remembered all my lines. Emily twirled proudly. "You were perfect," Sarah assured her. As they walked together toward the exit, another parent abruptly changed direction to avoid them, whispering something to her companion. The community's memory was long, and not everyone had embraced understanding over judgment. But Emily, oblivious to the subtle slight, skipped ahead happily, her doctor's coat fluttering behind her. The future would hold its challenges: Michael's ongoing recovery, the lingering effects of trauma, the watchful eyes of those who knew their story. Yet in this moment, watching her daughter proudly wearing a symbol of healing and her family finally walking together in truth, Sarah understood the most powerful lesson of their ordeal. The most dangerous threats aren't always from those who wish us harm, but from the truths we refuse to see in those we love most. And healing, while rarely perfect, begins when we finally bring those truths into the light.